Hi guys, and welcome to another Behind the Wedding. This time it's a little bit different. Instead of doing all the video clips at this wedding, what I decided to do was, because I don't want to do it every wedding because it might get a bit stale, so what I've done is, today we're going to do Behind the Wedding, the edit. I've picked out 30 different photos, the ones that I've selected for the blog, and we're going to re-edit all 30. So you're going to get a little bit of a behind the scenes on how I actually edit. In previous videos, I've had comments about my preset being available. It is not at the moment. It's taken me a long time to get my preset to how I want it. Basically, I don't want people having the exact same look as me at the moment. Let's dive straight into the computer. Here you can see we've got 30 different photos from the wedding of Eva and Jim. Eva is Polish, so her name is EWA, but you pronounce it Eva, as in like forever, Eva. So Eva and Jim at Hallgarth. She looks stunning. This first photo here, you can see it's very nice lighting. I've actually got another clip of this where I switched the lights on because the lights were on. So there's a little tip for you down the road. If you're just struggling with lights, turn them off. You know, our cameras are good enough these days. Just switch it off. A little bit of bride prep, the mirror, you know, looking out the window. Dad, first look. She had this wonderful dress. I mean, look at the sleeves on this. This dress is from Poland as well, so nobody else is going to be able to get that in the UK unless they know of this Polish designer. Bride walking in, etc. Ceremony, groomsmen crying. Ceremony itself, again, I'm not a big believer in hanging a dress on a coat hanger and taking a photograph of it, just looking sad, like just hanging on a coat hanger. That's not for me, and I don't like to move the dress as well. If it gets torn or a bit of dirt gets on it, I'm responsible. So my whole stance on the whole dress thing is don't touch it. But what I will do during the day is photograph it on the bride, which I always think looks better. It's filled out. I mean, this dress looked nice when it was hanging up on the wardrobe, but when she walked out of the bedroom into the living area with the dress on, everyone just was like, wow. So it always is going to look better on the bride. So I'm one for trying to photograph dress details when it's on the bride. Drinks reception. So again, we're just getting in close, looking for all the nice details. Couple of nice little portraits again of the bride in the dress. Hold hands, go for a walk. Very relaxed, doing some shots during a speech. Kid getting picked up by, I'd assume, a family member. It was quite funny. And again, just singing waiters, having a barrel of a good time, and then 30 photos. So these are the 30 photos that we're going to re-edit. So let's jump out of that. So that they're obviously edited already, so I just wanted to give you a look at those. So what I've already done is create a section of these ones. So these are all virtual copies in red, and what I'm going to do is reset all these photos. So reset, and then I'll jump back into survey, and you can see them sort of as they were straight out of camera. So this is all of the photos straight out of camera. I haven't done too much to them, which is my whole approach. Try to shoot as correct as I can in camera so that I have to do very little when I come to the editing. Let's start with image number 1, and that's Eva getting her makeup done by the wonderful Carly. Okay, I'll leave the history panel open so you can sort of see what I'm doing. You will see me using the keyboard rather than actual sliders because I have P-Fixer, which is this bit of software here. So I've got preferences and mappings. You can see I've got temperature, tint, exposure, and contrast mapped to keyboard shortcuts as well as my presets down here. But if you watch the history, you'll sort of see what's going on. But you'll see I've got this background set as white. Most of the time it comes like that, dark grey or that one. And then I prefer white because that's what it's going to be seen on. It's going to be seen on a white website, or most people have light themes as well, so I prefer to have the color background that it's going to be shown on so I can see the colors accurately. So, and I like to have it zoomed out. I don't like to work like this. I feel like if I have more white around it, I can sort of see how it's going to finally look. So if you hold shift when you're in develop, you'll get this little slider, and you can just drag left and right for your desired zoom. So I'll have it about there. Lovely. And then I'll just start editing from here. So this image was color, so I'm going to hold Option and press 1, and that will apply my color preset. Done. I don't have to do anything to that. That's pretty much good to go. If you wanted to, you could do other things. So let's just jump in and have a little play. So let's do an AI select, and let's just bring her face up a tad bit, like 0.2. Right, I'll call that good. We could maybe subtract from Carly's hands just to take it more away from there, and just make it more pronounced on her face. So let's see what that mask's done. Very subtle, but I didn't need to do it. This little bit of the kitchen area is a bit annoying, so I'm just going to go into crop. I'm just going to remove that. Right, next image, black and white, easy. Alt 2. Decrease the exposure a little bit. And then what I might do is press K to put in a brush, and I'm just going to put some highlight and exposure back in here. I have a preset called Subject Pop that I created, and that basically just lifts the exposure 0.3, highlights up 0.5, so it's very subtle, but if I turn that on and off, just lifts that area out a little bit. I'm going to go color, Alt 1, pretty much good to go. Maybe just bring it down a little bit. So I'm only looking at the dress, and then what I'll do is I'll use a select subject to bring back her face and skin tone a bit. So I'm just going to lift her up a little bit, tiniest amount, and then take that off the dress and shoulders. Let's do a little crop. Again, I'm just pressing R on the keyboard to go into crop. Pretty much good to go. That's nice. Okay, black and white for this one. Again, we've got the plug socket here. I can't crop from the bottom because I'd take her fingers off, as much as I've already took a little bit of the pinky off, which really annoys me, but I'll leave that for another time. So his face is pretty much buried in the shadows there, so I'm just going to pull a gradient up from the bottom, pull the highlights down a little bit on the rest of the photo, press K to make a brush, and we're just going to add a little bit of interest here, just to bring his face up a little bit. So highlights and exposure, not too much. As soon as you go sort of beyond 0.50 on exposure, the human eye sort of can detect that, so try to keep it under 0.5 if you're lifting exposure in certain areas, otherwise it looks like a very noticeable bright spot. I'm just going to take her sleeve down as well. We'll just drive that attention towards his face. So what we could do is create a radial, quite a large one. You never want to make them small, and I'm going to invert that, and then I could add a burn. So I've got burn exposure, so what that does is takes 0.5 down around everywhere else on the image, so it just helps drive the viewer's attention towards where I want it to be. So next image, again, more of a dress detail, so we can either do it in color. Let's have a look. Yep, looks nice. It's a bit green, so I'm going to add a bit more magentas to it. That looks nice. It could also be black and white. Really easy. Jumping on, again, I'm going to go color. Pull the exposure down a little bit. I'm just going to get rid of the black bit on the left side. It's quite nice. Job done. So you can pretty much see as well, I've really worked hard on my preset, so I very rarely have to change anything but exposure and crops, but I still try to get it right in camera. Even the matte temperature and white balance now, I can pretty much have it so if it's pretty accurate out of the camera, I can stick with it. So it's about speeding everything up. Here I'm going to use Alt 3, which is going to activate this auto transform to straighten up them doors. I'm going to go Alt 1 to create a colour, and then just lift the exposure a little bit. Now on the original, I'm not going to spend time doing it here. Let me just crop this in, probably about here. So I'm looking at the doors for the center, 'cause she's not in the center. So right about there. Now on the original, the one I just showed you before, I cloned out this car and I cloned out all of the path here. I even cloned out the signs on this door. So what I'm going to do is let's bring that up and I can flip between them. So you can see I got rid of the signs, and these are all just done in Lightroom. There's nothing been taken into Photoshop. The car's gone. The path was really annoying me with how cracked it was. So I fixed all of that, took the car out and took the signs out. And then this was the final shot here. So without me doing all those other little details, let me just focus on getting the exposure right for Eva and the dress. So I'm going to bring this down so it's a bit more dramatic, and then select subject, and we're just going to bring up the highlights. See, a lot of people will go straight in at exposure and just lift the entire thing, but if you just go for the highlights, sometimes you can see it's retaining the shadows in her face and obviously the blacks of the dress. So I like to sometimes start with highlights first rather than lifting exposure. So it's a bit too bright down here, so all I'm going to do is just take that off that side. Nice. Pretty much good to go with that. I'm not going to go into the hassle of doing all this. Like I said, if I just go to Q, you could use the magic selection now they have in Lightroom, just paint over it, job done. Same with the cracks. It was just a case of like drawing over them bits at a time until you get through. If you're trying to draw over a part of an image and you have these, if you press H, it will hide them, and then you can redraw over parts that you've already done. So if you're struggling, let's say if I draw a big bit here, so let's say you've cloned out this giant bit here, but then you want to clone out a little bit within it, you can see the tool disappears. So you'd have to start here and then go up into that bit. But if you press H, you can now just draw wherever you want. So there's a little tip for you. Let's move on to the next image. Oop, I accidentally pressed V on my way out there. There we go. Right, next image. So again, as she was walking in, I very quickly spun the camera into portrait, hence why it's caught it very wonky. So let's straighten that up. I'm going to go black and white, and then I'm going to have to pull the highlights up first, which does a lot for the image. Let's go exposure. Again, I'd usually use keyboard shortcuts, but I'm using the mouse a little bit more, probably because I'm doing this video. Again, probably select subject. I'm just going to drag the highlights up. I'm not too bothered about the shadows. I want that dramaticness. It's more about the dress and her. Nice. Okay, let's move on. She's walking in. Again, let's straighten this up a little bit. Alt 1, let's go color and take a little bit of temperature off and add a little bit of magentas. I think that's good to go. A bit bright on this side, so I'm just going to drag a gradient across, pull the highlights down, and then pull the exposure back. So probably brighten this area up. So what I'm going to do is just pull in a nice big radial and just pull that exposure up a little bit. And then bring the overall exposure down 1. Right, this was easy, black and white. And job's done. Let's move on. Color. Again, this is a bit awkward because this room at Hallgarth is the garden room, so it has steps. So I'm stood on the steps behind the celebrant, behind the registrar. Plus, they have this nice flower arch thing with their material on. So it obviously creates an obstacle, which you just have to work with. So let's add a little bit of magentas and good to go. Again, dress. Again, we can go color. Pretty much done, or we can go black and white, either or. This was black and white, I remember, so let's just crop this in. So just about making this a little bit about the hands, really. Let's pull the exposure up. This candle's a bit distracting of where it is, so let's take it out completely. it's not really in the best place either. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag the highlights and shadows down that area anyway, and then just bring it up overall. So I want the hands to be the attention, so I'm going to create that radial burn again, invert, and let's create a burn. Job done. Let's just go colour on this one. It was probably black and white, but it's too easy to do black and white. That's why I get a little bit annoyed with people who like overuse black and white. It's more like a get out of jail, like, oh, anything's easy to edit if you just make it black and white. Like, I'd be more impressed if everything was in colour. So I do try to edit nearly everything in colour, to be fair. I only ever use black and white if I think an emotion would look better in black and white, or the lighting is completely garbage. So like, this could be colour, absolutely no problem. Let's have a look at it. There we go. But again, I think I did it in black and white, but I still actually, let's just leave it in colour. Again, once you get to a point, if you're in the same environment, we could just sync settings. So I have the key that's next to the number 1 to sync the previous settings. So if I just press that, bosh, done, all in one go. So I'm going to lift her up, but obviously this side's come up too much, so I'm just going to pull it down. And then just give it a little crop. Again, if you wanted to keep her hand, obviously you just have to reset. Again, probably just a little bit of a exposure lift, tiniest amount. Right, again, this one, let's just go black and white. You can easily get away with the colour. Now obviously she's closer to the door, to me than they are, so they're a little bit darker. So we can just lift this area up slightly with a brush. Job done. Again, could make it black and white, which the original one was. I'll go colour for this. Add some magentas, lovely. Trying to speed up a little bit. Again, that's just colour straight on, a little bit of exposure, maybe a tiny bit of magenta. See what it looks like straightened up. Job done. We could actually get rid of this little thing on the floor as well if we wanted to. Let's move it on. Little crop to start with. Computer's running a little bit laggy. That's probably because I'm doing screen recording, so sorry about that. Alt 1. Again, if I'm getting the exposure right, and I've worked so hard on the preset, put it on, job's a good one. Tiny bit of tint added, and then yeah, pretty much good to go. Again, same setting, so I'm just going to press my paste from previous button, reset the crop, just lift that exposure a tiny bit, done. Again, same setting, paste previous, fix the crop, job done. And then this one I think I did black and white, but let's do colour again because we don't need to use it. Job done. So I'm going to do a whole video on survey mode. I use it all the time. So these 4 were shot in the exact same space and time. And this is where consistent editing comes from. Once you've done a little set like that, obviously we're doing a selection of 30, but let's say you were doing a full 800, 900 image gallery. You might have, say, 20, 30 photos from a specific section. Let's just say it's a couple portraits. You should then be hitting all of those, select them all, N on the keyboard, take them into survey, and do they look consistent across the board? And as you can see, they do here. So that would make a nice set. Right, next one, we're into the shots. So I hate shooting with windows behind couples during speeches. I try my best to always shoot from the sides so the windows aren't affected, otherwise you get this bit of a washed out halo effect. So if you come across windows, go down the side. So let's pull the exposure back, take off some of the temperature, good to go. You could also go black and white if you wanted to. Now with this, because it is a little washed out, I would probably put a little bit of dehaze in, probably a little bit of contrast back into the image. You'll notice my contrast is usually set on my colour and black and white at -40. So this is how I get really nice skin tones. If I come back to Eva on this portrait, go to 100%, I'll just wait for that to load. Okay, so you can see the skin tones are really nice. So even if I reset this a contrast to 0, if you just watch her skin tones, becomes very punchy. The blacks have gone really black, and the skin can sometimes just look a little motley, whereas if you just take that off, you just get a lot nicer skin tones. So there's one of the biggest tips I can give you. If your contrast is set at 0 or above, maybe have a tweak with it. Obviously you add contrast through other things like your tone curve, your blacks, your whites, your shadows, etc. So if I drag the blacks down here, obviously that adds contrast as well. And if I lift it all the way to the top, it takes it off. So you've got to find that balance. If you can take anything away from this video, have a look at your contrast. Right, let's move on. So you can see, I think it was probably an auntie just picking up the kid. So I'm just going to move it in a bit. And then let's go black and white. So as much as the wall is straight here, because this chair is directly in front, it makes the entire image look wonky, like on an angle. So I'm just going to rotate this to try and give it a little bit better of a straightness. I can't go too much or I'll chop her hand off completely. Let's move on. So straight away I'm just going to lift the exposure a tiny bit. So I should have shot that a little bit better. Again, we can go colour. So let's pull the oranges a little bit. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a select subject to pop dodge these two guys out. I'll fix his red skin as well in a minute. Subject pop. Straight away, massive difference. So originally I did it in black and white, but I'm showing you that you can do it in colour. So if we wanted to, we could go in, do a select subject on his face only. So let's just subtract everything else. When I want to paint directly, what I do is I take off everything. So I subtract the entire thing, so I have a black mask, and then I hold Alt on the keyboard, and then I just draw back in the areas I want to be affected. So I find that loads easier than the other way. So we can take off the reds by just pulling into the greens a little bit. So obviously if I go too far, it's about there I would say. And then we can add a little bit of colour back to them. So if I show you that mask on and off, took quite a red face and just fixed his skin a little bit. Again, we could just hit black and white, jobs are good in. But if you can fix things in colour, that's obviously beneficial. Okay, 4 more images to go, guys. So let's rotate this image, square up the frame. If we wanted to, we could take out this little sign. I'm not going to go into doing the other one, but you know, if things are isolated quite well, you can get rid of them. Let's go colour. Pretty much done. Let's add a tiny little bit of exposure into that part there, and then take out a little bit of temperature. Job done. Again, a little rotate on this one. You can either go colour, pull out a little bit of temperature, or we just go black and white. Again, you can see it's very quick, very easy. We can go black and white, or we can go colour, bit of exposure, bit of temperature. Job done. So I have all these keys set up here, so I can literally just have this finger and just dot around them. This one needs a little bit of magenta as well. And again, final image, sort of disco lighting. We can do this, we can fix it. We don't have to just go black and white. Job done. So first thing, let's just drag all of the oranges out. So I'm just looking back here at the overall image. Right, now it's got too much magenta. So if I use my keyboard shortcuts, let's go down into the greens. Right, straight away, much better skin tone. And then let's have a look at the temperature. Okay, let's say about there. So loads better than before. So we can fix stuff. You don't have to just apply black and white straight away, guys. Job done. So let's have a quick look. All 30 images re-edited. I hope there was a few things in there that you could take away, especially the contrast trick. If your skin tones are looking a bit motley or a bit too grungy, honestly, just have a look. don't take it personally, take it as constructive criticism. Even myself look at it and go, no, it's perfect. And you take -20 off, you start editing a few images and you start playing with it and you're like, oh, that's much better. Can I take a bit more off and get even nicer skin tones? So, and that's how I've got to my preset. So pretty much, as long as I shoot right in camera, I can now pretty much press one button, little bit of exposure if I need it, or down very quickly. A lot of images, especially if I'm outside, as you sort of saw from these 4 photos where they were outside in the garden. Put the preset on, move to the next image. If you're having to do a lot of work with your preset, it's not really saving you that much time, is it? So have a little play with it. But anyway, I hope that helps, guys. Let me know in the comments down below how you edit. My preset isn't available. It might be in a couple of years, but it isn't at the moment. Yeah, let me know what videos you want coming up on the channel, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a good one.